She stood there with folded arms, pointing at my land like she owned it, confidently declaring my ranch as community property. Neighbors watched, phones recording, as she laid down imaginary rules. She truly believed she had authority, until one silent switch flipped, the electric fence came alive, and her delusion met reality in the most shocking way possible. Karen didn't arrive quietly. She never did. Her presence announced itself long before her voice did, heels crunching on gravel like she was marching onto a stage built just for her. The ranch stretched wide behind me, open land, old fences, and generations of ownership rooted deeper than any document she could imagine. But Karen didn't see history. She saw opportunity. Or rather, she saw control. She stood at the edge of my property line, arms crossed tight across her chest, chin lifted in that unmistakable posture of someone who believes authority comes from tone alone. She didn't ask a question. She didn't introduce herself. She declared, "This land," she said sharply, waving her manicured hand toward acres of private ranchland, "is community property. You can't block people off like this." It wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't confusion. It was a verdict she had already passed in her own mind. I remember the silence that followed. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everyone nearby felt the absurdity of it at the same time. A few neighbors had stopped walking. Someone slowed their truck. Another person pulled out their phone, sensing what always came with people like her, spectacle. Karen continued, encouraged by her own voice. "The law governs this area," she went on, using the word governs like a weapon. "This ranch was designated as shared access land years ago. You don't get to just decide otherwise." There it was. The foundation of her entire claim, confidence without proof. She spoke in absolutes, leaning heavily on acronyms and imagined rules, as if volume could replace legality. This was her pattern. Say it loudly. Say it often. Say it like no one would dare question it. But the ranch wasn't new. It wasn't forgotten. And it definitely wasn't hers. I asked her calmly, "Can you show me the documentation?" Her eyes narrowed, not because she was searching for papers, but because the question itself offended her. To Karen, authority wasn't something you proved. It was something others accepted. "I don't need to show you anything," she snapped. Everyone knows this. That phrase, "everyone knows this," was her shield. A vague crowd of imaginary supporters backing her up. But when I glanced around, no one stepped forward. No one nodded. No one agreed. The only thing everyone was doing was watching. Karen took a step closer, crossing onto my land without hesitation. "You're illegally restricting access," she continued. "People walk through here. Kids ride bikes here. This isn't your personal kingdom." The irony was thick. She accused me of acting like royalty while crowning herself judge, jury, and enforcer. She spoke of community while ignoring the actual community standing behind her, silently aware she was wrong. I explained, again, calmly, that the ranch had been privately owned for decades. That property lines were surveyed. That the fence wasn't new, just upgraded. That nothing she was saying matched any legal reality. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh. A dismissive one. "Oh please," she said. "People like you always say that. You buy land and think you're above the rules. People like you." That was the turning point. Because her claim was never really about land. It was about hierarchy. About who she believed should have power, and who shouldn't. Karen believed authority belonged to those who sounded like her, acted like her, and spoke with the same entitled certainty. Ownership, law, and history were inconvenient details. She pulled out her phone, scrolling aggressively. "I can call the HOA president right now," she threatened. "I can call the county. I can call the police." The words tumbled out fast, stacked like bricks in a wall of intimidation. But threats only work when the person making them has leverage. "Go ahead," I said. That wasn't the response she expected. Karen hesitated, just for a second. Then she recovered, dialing anyway, pacing as she spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Yes. Hi, this is Karen. There's a man here blocking community land with an illegal fence." "Yes, the ranch." "No, he's refusing to comply." She nodded aggressively while listening, throwing smug glances my way like the verdict was already written. But something wasn't going her way. I could see it in her face. Her tone shifted, from commanding to defensive. "What do you mean it's private?" she demanded into the phone. "That can't be right. I've lived here for years." She listened again, jaw tightening. "Well, someone needs to do something about it," she said, voice rising. "Because he's endangering the public." She hung up and turned back to me, frustration barely contained. They said they'll look into it, she muttered, which was Karen speak for I didn't get the answer I wanted. Still, she wasn't done. You should remove that fence immediately, she insisted. If someone gets hurt, that's on you. There it was again, false authority, recycled and reinforced by repetition. Karen believed if she said it enough times, reality would eventually bend. But reality doesn't bend. Behind her, the ranch stood silent and unbothered. The fence wasn't a threat. It was a boundary, clear, legal, and final. And boundaries are what people like Karen fear most. She paced again, raising her voice, trying to rally invisible supporters. This is exactly what's wrong with people today, she declared. Selfish. Hoarding land. Ignoring the community. The word community came out like a shield and a sword all at once. But it rang hollow. Because community isn't something you weaponize. It's something you respect. A neighbor finally spoke up. That ranch has always been private, he said quietly. Karen shot him a look sharp enough to cut glass. You're mistaken, she snapped. Another neighbor shook her head. No, he's right. Karen's confidence flickered, but didn't collapse. Not yet. She doubled down. Well, it should be community land, she argued. That's the point. And there it was. The truth, finally exposed. Her claim wasn't based on law. It was based on desire. She wanted access. She wanted control. She wanted the ranch to serve her version of fairness, where ownership didn't matter if it inconvenienced her. That's not how property works, I said evenly. She scoffed. According to who? According to the law. Karen rolled her eyes. Laws change, she said. And people like you don't get to decide them. But she was wrong. Laws don't change because someone is loud. Ownership doesn't disappear because someone feels entitled. And power, real power, doesn't need to announce itself. By now, the crowd had grown. Phones were up. Whispers traveled fast. Karen sensed it. Her performance was slipping. This isn't over, she warned. I'll make sure this gets handled. She turned to leave, but not before throwing one last look at the fence, eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. In that moment, she still believed she was right. She still believed authority was hers by default. She still believed the ranch would eventually bend to her will. She had no idea that her false claim of power was about to collide with something far stronger than confidence. Reality. And reality doesn't care how loud you are. Karen came back the next morning with a different kind of energy. It wasn't confidence anymore. It was determination mixed with irritation, the kind that shows when someone didn't get their way but refuses to accept defeat. The sun was barely up, ranch quiet and still, when her car pulled up again, tires crunching against gravel like a challenge being thrown down. She stepped out quickly, sunglasses on, phone already in her hand as if she were recording evidence for a story she had written in her head. She didn't greet anyone. She didn't ask permission. She walked straight toward the fence. The electric fence. It stood there calmly, thin wires stretched tight, warning signs clearly visible. Nothing aggressive about it. Nothing hidden. Just a clear boundary, doing exactly what boundaries are meant to do, existing without apology. Karen scoffed. You see, she said loudly, turning to no one in particular. This is what I was talking about. Completely unsafe. Totally illegal. A few neighbors were already watching from a distance. Word had spread overnight. Everyone knew something was coming. With people like Karen, things never end quietly. She pointed her phone at the fence, narrating dramatically. This so-called ranch owner has put up an electric fence on community land, she said, her voice dripping with certainty. Someone could get seriously hurt. She stepped closer. I warned her. There are signs, I said calmly. You should step back. Karen laughed, waving her hand dismissively. Oh please, she replied. Those signs are probably fake too. That laugh, short, sharp, arrogant, was the last sound of her delusion holding together. She took one more step forward. In her mind, she was about to expose a fraud. She believed the fence was either inactive or illegal, and that the moment she crossed it, the entire illusion would collapse in her favor. This was her proof. Her moment. She reached out. And reality responded instantly. The shock wasn't dramatic in the way movies make it look. There were no sparks flying, no explosions. Just a sudden, unmistakable jolt that snapped through her arm and straightened her spine like a lightning strike with a purpose. Karen yelped. Sharp, high-pitched, involuntary. Her phone flew from her hand, landing face down in the dirt. She stumbled backward, nearly losing her balance, sunglasses sliding crooked across her face. The ranch went silent. Then came the gasps. Karen froze, eyes wide, breath caught somewhere between outrage and disbelief. Her body had reacted before her mind could catch up. Muscles tense, heart racing, pride shattered in an instant. She stared at the fence like it had betrayed her. What? What was that? She screamed. No one answered right away. Because the answer was obvious. That, I said evenly, as an electric fence. Her face flushed red, not just from the shock, but from the realization settling in. The fence was real. It was active. And it didn't care about her assumptions. You assaulted me, she yelled suddenly, grasping at outrage like a life raft. This is assault. A neighbor shook his head. Another quietly muttered, there were warning signs. Karen spun around, scanning the faces watching her. Phones were out now, not hidden, not subtle. This wasn't her performance anymore. She pointed at me, shaking. You did this on purpose. She accused. You knew I'd touch it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I warned you, I said. And the signs are clearly posted. Karen looked back at the fence again, finally noticing what she had chosen to ignore before. Bright warnings. Clear symbols. Multiple notices spaced along the wire. Reality doesn't hide. It waits. Her breathing grew shallow. Her plan had collapsed, and she had no backup. The authority she had pretended to carry was gone now, replaced by embarrassment and anger fighting for control. This fence shouldn't even be here. She insisted, though her voice cracked slightly now. You can't just electrify land people walk through. No one is supposed to walk through it, I replied. That's the point. She opened her mouth to argue, and then stopped. Because the truth had finally reached her. If the land were truly community property, the fence would already be gone. Authorities would have intervened. Someone would have stopped it. But no one had. Not the HOA. Not the county. Not the police. Because the ranch wasn't hers to claim. Karen bent down to grab her phone, hands shaking just enough to be noticeable. The screen was cracked. Another silent consequence. This isn't over, she said again, but the words were weaker now, stripped of their earlier power. A sheriff's vehicle pulled onto the road nearby, not for her, just passing through. But the timing couldn't have been worse for her ego. She flinched instinctively, eyes following it until it disappeared. She suddenly looked very small standing next to that fence. This is dangerous, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Someone could have been killed, but even she didn't believe that anymore. The electric fence hadn't harmed her. It had educated her. Pain is temporary. Humiliation lasts longer. She stepped back further this time, putting real distance between herself and the boundary she had challenged. Her posture had changed. Shoulders slumped slightly. Chin lowered. The woman who had arrived ready to conquer was gone. Now she just wanted out. Karen turned toward her car, aware of the eyes on her back, the recordings already spreading. She paused once, glancing over her shoulder at the fence again, this time not with arrogance, but with resentment. That fence had done something no argument could. It had ended the debate. No paperwork, no shouting, no threats, just one moment of undeniable truth. As she drove away, the ranch returned to silence. Birds resumed their calls. The wind moved through the grass like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Because Karen now knew something she could never unknow. The land wasn't hers. The power wasn't hers. In reality doesn't negotiate. Karen thought the worst part was over when she drove away from the ranch that morning. In her mind, the electric fence incident was an embarrassment, yes, but one she could reframe later. She believed she could still control the narrative. People like Karen always do. They don't accept defeat. They rewrite it. But humiliation doesn't end when you leave the scene. Sometimes, that's when it begins. By noon, the videos were everywhere. Grainy clips at first, her confident approach, her dismissive laugh, the exact second her hand touched the fence. Then clearer ones, slowed down, zoomed in, reposted with captions she couldn't control. The internet did what it always does. It removed context where she wanted it, and added truth where she feared it. Karen versus electric fence, community land, apparently not. When entitlement meets reality high voltage. Her name wasn't even necessary. Her behavior was enough. Karen sat at her kitchen table refreshing her phone, watching notifications pile up. Messages from neighbors. Missed calls from HOA board members. Texts that started with concern and ended with distance. What happened out there? Why didn't you check first? This is making the HOA look bad. That last one stung the most. Because Karen hadn't just embarrassed herself, she had exposed the illusion of authority she had built around herself for years. The same confidence that once intimidated people now looked ridiculous under scrutiny. At the emergency HOA meeting that evening, the room felt different. Conversation stopped when she walked in. Eyes followed her, not with respect, but curiosity. Some with judgment, some with barely concealed amusement. Karen took her usual seat at the front. No one joined her. The president cleared his throat. "We need to address the ranch incident," he said carefully. Karen jumped in immediately. "I was protecting community interests," she insisted. "That fence is dangerous." The president nodded slowly. "According to county records," he replied, "the ranch is privately owned. Always has been." Silence. "And the fence?" Karen pressed. "Surely that's a violation." "It's fully permitted," he said. "Inspected. Legal." A few people shifted in their seats. Karen's jaw tightened. "So what? We're just ignoring the safety issue?" she demanded. A board member spoke up. "There were warning signs. You crossed a boundary." That word again. Boundary. Karen looked around the room, searching for allies. She found none. The authority she once assumed was gone. Not taken. Withdrawn. The president continued, "Going forward, no HOA member is to represent private land as community property without verified documentation." It was a policy statement. But everyone knew who it was for. Karen sat back, arms crossed, not in confidence this time, but defensiveness. She felt exposed, reduced. The meeting ended quickly after that. People left in groups, whispering. Karen walked out alone. Outside, two neighbors she once intimidated stepped past her without acknowledgement. Another gave her a polite nod, careful, distant. Respect had been replaced with tolerance. At the ranch, things were quieter, but not unchanged. Visitors slowed near the fence now, reading signs carefully. No one crossed. No one challenged. The electric fence had become a symbol, not of hostility, but of clarity. A reporter from a local online outlet reached out later that week. "We're covering a story about property rights and HOA overreach," she said. "Would you like to comment?" I declined. The story didn't need more words. It had already spoken. Karen, on the other hand, couldn't stop talking. She posted long explanations online, framing herself as a victim. She used words like misunderstanding and safety concern. But comments told a different story. "You don't get to decide what's yours. Read the signs next time. Entitlement isn't authority." Each reply chipped away at her version of events. Weeks passed. Karen stopped attending HOA meetings regularly. When she did show up, she stayed quiet. She no longer interrupted, no longer declared. The woman who once spoke over everyone now listened, or pretended to. One afternoon, I saw her again near the fence. She stood on the public side this time. No phone, no audience, just her, staring at the boundary she had once challenged. For a moment, I thought she might say something. She didn't. She turned and walked away. That was the lesson. Public humiliation isn't about being laughed at. It's about being revealed. Karen wasn't punished by law or fined or arrested. She was confronted with truth, and forced to live with it in front of everyone. She learned that ownership isn't arrogance. That boundaries aren't oppression, and that community doesn't mean access without consent. The ranch remained unchanged. The fence stayed active. Life moved forward. But Karen did not. She moved more carefully now. Spoke less. Assumed less. The illusion of power had been stripped away, leaving only reality behind. In reality, once learned the hard way, is impossible to forget.